of the Cabinet. I believe we are streaming live now, so welcome to the Town Hall, all those of you who have joined us here for this meeting of Cabinet, and welcome to people joining us online to watch and listen. So we'll start off with apologies for absence, and I have apologies from Councillor Jemima Hunt, who is unwell and unable to attend this evening. Next item is declarations of interest. Has anyone got any interest they need to declare? Not seeing any, so that is that. And then we have addresses and questions by members of the public, and we have 4 notified and agreed. So if I take you in order, I have Diana Volper, Mark Ladbroke, Kat Hobbs and Jamie Clark. So is everyone present? Right, good. So you have up to 3 minutes each. I think Emma behind me will give you a bit of a wave at 1 minute to go. And we have a total of 15 minutes on the agenda for this item. I hope that everyone can manage to keep more or less on time. I don't think we'll be overly fierce about enforcing it as long as people are reasonable. So if Diana, if you'd like to step up and be the first to speak, then we will then hand over to Mark, to Kat, and then to Jamie, and then we will respond. So thank you. If you sit down, and you'll have to press the right-hand button, and when it goes red, that means it's on. And you can be heard. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will just go straight to the question to not waste anyone's time today. So my question is the following. Given that, firstly, Serco Leisure is a part of the Serco Group PLC and is therefore functionally indistinguishable and an integral part of Serco and the Serco Group. Secondly, that Serco has a reputation as a leading name in running immigration detention centers for profit, a motive that inevitably seeks to drive down costs to the detriment of those subject to immigration control and earning a terrible track record in doing so. And these include, but are not limited to, cases of accommodation filled with rats, cockroaches and sinks filled with sewage, allegations of abuse by Serco staff at Yarlswood, culminating in a highly critical report by the HM Inspectorate of Prisons in 2015, systematic denial of abuse and degrading treatment, even in the face of over 100 migrant women going on hunger strike in protest of their conditions in 2018. Thirdly, given that Oxford's repeatedly asserted its aspiration to be a city of sanctuary. Fourthly, that the public feels very strongly about this, as evidenced by the pushback and the petition arising from the news of this bid and the protests happening outside right now as we speak. And lastly, that this bid includes plans to convert much sought after hall space in Blackbird Leys in ways that may take away important community spaces from local sports clubs that are dedicated to and inclusive to women, non-binary people, migrants and asylum seekers, as well as other marginalized populations. I would like to ask, were ethical considerations taken into account as part of the decision-making process? Do you not see a fundamental contradiction between Serco's well-documented abuse of asylum seekers and refugees and Oxford's aspiration to be a local authority of sanctuary? By proceeding with this, you're essentially sending a message to our community that it is acceptable to take money for public infrastructure through the exploitation of migrants, all while claiming to be a place of refuge for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will respond to all of the questions and comments together, including actually subsequently we have a comment from Councillor Jarvis as well. So once we've heard from everybody, I'll respond to everybody in one go. So thank you. And if we could now have, sorry, who's next? So it's Mark next. Hi, Mark. Right-hand button. Red.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me here or permitting me to come here tonight to address these concerns. You will know that I'm one of the union representatives to the Labour Party. The question I want to ask is why you are even considering awarding a contract as is proposed in this document. It seems to me that there are a whole series of problems with this document. Your own financial risk register has a band of red indicating the financial risks with this contract. Your document shows that pre-contract discussions about enforcement are still incomplete. It's recognised in the document that Serco may be unable to deliver on the mobilisation of the contract. So you've talked about a 2-month extension, which actually brings the mobilisation pretty well in line of what your anticipated mobilisation would be for an in-house contract. The contract talks about the actual cost for standard membership increasing by 17% for the public as a result of this switch, it's slightly unclear about whether us as council taxpayers will be picking up utility bill costs in the first year of the contract. And then we guarantee that anything above the retail price index in terms of increases will be picked up again by community taxpayers. The council officers themselves predict that management fees will be over budget in the 10-year budget, 10-year period, and they anticipate that council reserves will need to be used to prop up this contract. The uncompleted dilapidation works from the existing outsourcing contract with Fusion will not be recovered, but it's proposed again that council taxpayers pick up that bill. The council will need to employ an additional officer for client monitoring and corporate property matters, again at an unspecified cost. The council will offer a £2 million capital grant to the winning company of the contract. And in contrast to these generous treatment of the corporate interests that are bidding here, we understand that money is being saved by denying the largely low-paid workforce access to the local government pension scheme or an equivalent, and there appears to have been no user or union involvement in the evaluation of the bids or indeed of setting the procurement criteria. I mean, in addition to this, we've got the issues of the ice rink and the ferry centre also have schedules of condition with a council taxpayer, again, funding costs over 100,000. There's no break clause that we can see that has been specified in the contract. And at the very least, you would expect such a break clause to exist. And this is something that has been in the works for the last 5 years. Council officers would have been aware that the Fusion contract was due to end in 2024. The risk of delay in mobilisation is constantly cited by officers as a justification for rejecting the in-house bid. And given the 5 years' notice, that's difficult to understand. Now, Serco is an outsourcing company with, as we've heard, some poor reputation in a number of fields. And in addition, this is not a good deal for the council taxpayer. And may I make one final point, Chair? We've not seen the scrutiny papers either for this, and which are not published on the website. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. I don't know why the scrutiny papers are not yet published, but they should be soon, and we have got them. They are now. Okay, thank you. Right, we now move on to Kat.
Thank you for giving me permission to speak today. I'm here today because I love this city. I love its swimming pools, I love its ice rink. I grew up here, and I support the council's agreed strategy for 2020 to 2024. Your strategy talks about the Oxford model, wholly owned companies and commercial properties which create jobs, support the local economy, and provide additional funds that support the delivery of public services. It talks about supporting social enterprise and cooperatives and thriving communities, and it talks about Oxford being a world-class city. I truly understand that these are very difficult times for councils. You've got a lack of funding and ambition for public services from national government. You've got falling numbers from the pandemic for leisure services, and you've got unhelpful procurement law. But this council should not allow itself to be pressurised by Serco or any other bidder. You represent the people of Oxford. If there is pressure, do you want to work with that for the next 10 years or pay millions to get out of it early when the contract doesn't deliver or ends up costing more? Because Serco will squeeze the council at every opportunity, every renegotiation. That's how this company works, and they have a whole legal department behind them that is far bigger than this council's. That is a huge risk and a huge distraction to your mission. While Oxford City Council is trying to get into a contract with Serco, other councils are shelling out to get out. If you look at Peterborough, just this month it was announced that it's ending its contract with Serco 7 years early, bringing 275 staff in-house, ending the contract to save money and provide best value to residents. And I quote, "We are satisfied with the savings we will make over the next 7 years will far outweigh the sum we have agreed," which is an undisclosed sum, how much they're paying to Serco to get out of that contract. There are many other examples too, which I don't have time to go into now. Other councils are also insourcing leisure services. Haringey Deputy Leader has said, having control of our leisure services is the right step. We live in the borough, we understand and use the services ourselves. This is the way we can provide the best service. Tower Hamlets, Warrington are other examples. The Association for Public Service Excellence has said that councils have been insourcing leisure because they've been handing over money to cover losses and getting very little back for it, which, by the way, is a repeating story with the public sector and private companies. I've been keeping a close eye on Serco's failures for 10 years now. I believe the evidence is abundantly clear. Serco's expertise is in winning contracts and extracting as much value as possible, not in delivering high-quality services. There has been no public consultation about this. There should be one. I'm here today to beg you, please press pause on this decision. Please ask the community, hold a public consultation. Please look again at all the options. Please look again at insourcing. And please say no to Serco so that Oxford can continue to be a world-class city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kat. And now, finally, Jamie Clark. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name's Jamie. I live down the road. I'm a resident who shouldn't be here. I know a number of you, and I care about issues like transport and climate change. This is not something I normally get involved in. But my family, I've got 3 kids, and my wife, we use the leisure services week in, week out. We support Fusion through the difficult times and in the past and the good times, because we believe in the public services. We believe in bringing leisure centres to being an affordable place that people feel comfortable and able to enjoy their leisure time. And my kids and I don't want to have the next 10 years being dominated by Serco's incompetence and failures, as you've heard from Kat. Last week, I was so upset about it, I thought someone's got to do something, and I set up a petition. Within 4 days, we've had over 800 signatures from local people who look to you for their representation. Serco has a terrible reputation. You don't want to be bringing them into our leisure services. We're deeply worried about the ethics. You all know about them. I know you do. You've heard about some of them tonight. The fraud that they've been found guilty of, the misdemeanors, the constant problems. Do you really want to take that on board and be dealing with that for the next 10 years? And it will be on your watch. You might feel like you've got no choice, but we're showing you there is a choice, and other councils have made the same. I notice you're all Labour Party representatives. Well, Rachel Reeves, just a couple of years ago, when talking about the outsourcing of track and trace, said, "This is grim beyond belief. While Serco is raking in the profits, people are paying the price for its failure. It's time to sack Serco." Don't end up in that situation where you feel conflicted. It's got to be now, or it won't ever happen. After the revelations of the post office scandal, where these contract processes were used to justify going through with something that 15 years later we're all now knowing happened, I would like to ask you to stand by the courage of your convictions, to stand up now for my kids and their future, as well as the council and all the other residents that are going to be impacted by this. You can put a pause on it. I know it's not going to be easy, but we will support you to make it happen. This is democracy. Don't be blackmailed by a big multinational. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you all of you for your comments, and I appreciate where they're coming from. We've also had questions in from Caroline Rain and also from Liz Pretz and Bill McKeith on behalf of Keep Our NHS Public. Those will be published, I believe, alongside the agenda, and all of the more detailed questions will be responded to by officers. But I am now going to move on to allow Chris Jarvis, Councillor Chris Jarvis, to speak, and then I will respond altogether to all of you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, and I'll start by thanking the four contributors that we've had to this meeting already. Now, there are three quick points I want to make to Cabinet this evening. Firstly, in the report being discussed by you this evening, it states that the awarding of the contract to the recommended supplier would not adversely impact the council's reputation. I want to ask Cabinet members sat around this table, or these tables, to consider that claim carefully. In advance of this meeting, as Jamie previously said, more than 800 people have signed a petition asking for the recommendation in the paper before you to not be agreed. More than 13,000 people have watched videos online which makes the exact same demand. A coalition of groups, including trade unions, public service user groups and migrant rights campaigners, have come to this meeting to protest, to demonstrate and to address you. I would ask Cabinet members to again consider that claim in the report. If what I have just described is not an adverse impact on the council's reputation, I struggle to imagine what would be. The second point I would like to make relates to the justification given as to why the council believes in-house provision of the leisure services is unaffordable. The public report states that higher costs result from taking longer to mobilise and fully in-source the services, not being able to realise higher income levels in the early years of the contract, lack of existing critical mass and access to supply chains, and higher mobilisation costs. However, those of you sitting around the Cabinet table tonight, like all councillors, have had sight of the confidential papers, which give greater detail as to financial reasons the council has deemed insourcing to be infeasible. Now, while these remain in the confidential papers, I of course cannot describe them in this public setting. Nevertheless, I wanted to make clear the public report, I don't think, accurately reflects the reasons given to councillors. And as such, I believe the public reports to be fundamentally dishonest in their representation of the arguments made for continued outsourcing of the council's leisure provision, and that it is demonstrably in the public interest for these to be more clearly outlined. Residents of our city deserve to know the actual basis on which this recommendation has been made, and if Cabinet does decide to agree it tonight, the basis on which Cabinet members have made that decision. This Council Scrutiny Committee recommended that Cabinet publish more detail on the in-house comparator. I hope that Cabinet will be accepting this recommendation. And my final point is this. When the issue was discussed at the Scrutiny Committee meeting last week, the Cabinet member for Parks and Leisure said, and I quote, "It's not our decision." Now, I suspect that in the coming discussion, we will hear a lot about process and about how you've been backed into a corner and about how there is no alternative. But it is important that we are absolutely clear that whatever decision Cabinet reaches this evening, it is just that, the decision that you yourselves have made. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And I may ask others to comment as well on some of the comments that you made there, because I certainly wasn't aware that you were going to make some of the allegations that you did. So just responding to the general comments that have been made. First of all, thank you all, Mark, Kat, Diana, Jamie and Chris, for your addresses and for raising your concerns about the recommendations to award the leisure management contract to Serco Leisure. The Cabinet has also received, as I have said, similar representations from Caroline and Liz and Oxford District Trade Union Council. I will respond to the overall representations that you and the others have made to Cabinet, and officers are also preparing written answers to the detailed questions which were circulated more widely and to councillors. So today we are considering the officers' recommendation to appoint Serco Leisure as the preferred leisure operator. Nationally, several councils have declared that they are unable to balance their budgets, and many are reducing their leisure provision and in some cases closing leisure centres. The council is keen to ensure that our leisure offer is one that is sustainable in the longer term, provides much improved services and looks to strongly align with health priorities whilst also being accessible and affordable to our diverse communities in the city. And I think it's worth noting that this morning on Radio 4, I heard yet another council talking about having to unfortunately close one of their recreation centres. So that was Lib Dem run Somerset. Following a transparent and competitive process which has fully complied with procurement policies and legal requirements, Serco Leisure have presented a bid that matches the priorities of the council while also driving investment and improving quality within our facilities, including providing brand new gym equipment and improvements, while also enabling them to be sustainable over the longer term. Serco Leisure is one of the country's leading leisure operators and is the current UK Pool and Spa Water Leisure Operator of the Year. It also manages Stoke Mandeville Stadium, the birthplace of the Paralympic movement, national sports centres such as Bisham Abbey and Lillis Hall, alongside many local authority centres, including Birmingham, which is a city of sanctuary. Serco Leisure's proposal includes a number of public benefits, including concessions for low-income families, free swimming for all children and young people aged 16 and under who live in Oxford, and it also secures £2.75 million investment in upgrading our centres. The contract would see the council working with Serco Leisure alongside Oxfordshire Health System to ensure the leisure facilities continue to support public health and reduce pressure on the NHS. There will also be a funding pot where we can better target communities in need to help break down any barriers to access. The appointment of the leisure operator, and this is important, is a legal process that follows procurement law, and it is not open to political intervention. Serco Leisure's tender scored best against the council's criteria, which included both qualitative and financial elements, but with an emphasis on quality, 60% on quality, 40% on finance, and which we are legally required to accept. The council can only consider the behaviour and performance of Serco Leisure as the bidding company in its assessment of the bid. We cannot consider issues raised relating to other companies in deciding the procurement outcome. If Cabinet approves the recommendation, then one of the next key steps will be talking to Serco in early February about how we put in place the right contractual arrangements to ensure that they deliver their commitments and to secure the smooth transfer of services from Fusion at the end of March. We remain committed to Oxford being a place where everyone feels welcome, and to our work supporting refugees and asylum seekers and celebrating the contribution they make to our communities and ensuring they have good access to leisure in our city. So thank you very much, everybody. I am now going to move on to the, well, I'm assuming that there are no councillor addresses on neighbourhood issues. Don't think we've been notified of any, or items raised by Cabinet members. Oh, sorry, there is one on item raised by Cabinet members. So let me go to that and then we will take scrutiny reports. So Anna, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So just to slightly take a bit of a diversion here, I would just like to take this opportunity to show appreciation to both the City and ODS employees who pulled together a genuinely formidable response to the flooding in Oxford earlier this month. What was shown a few weeks ago really was the very best of the public sector, in my opinion, with an incredibly well-planned, coordinated and executed response across the two councils, the Emergency Services and the Environment Agency. I am genuinely intensely grateful for the 70 or so City and ODS employees who pulled some quite serious shifts to mitigate the worst and save a number of Oxford residents from the misery of having their homes flooded. It does demonstrate to me the value of local government in that it is, local. There was a crisis. We are the ones that know our community and we were there. You know, the city was there putting up flood barriers, moving sandbags, manning pumps, finding temporary accommodation for those who were flooded, finding working toilets for people, fielding queries, getting information out, checking in on vulnerable residents, and inevitably cleaning up afterwards. As a ward member in Hinksey Park, I got to witness all of this in real time on the ground, and it was genuinely formidable. So yes, I just wanted to put on the record my gratitude, our gratitude and pride in the public servants of this organisation who stepped up when residents really needed it. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Anna. And yeah, I think we would all absolutely concur with that. A really big thank you from all of us here in the Cabinet to all the staff who worked so hard on the response. Caroline and I wrote individually to all members of staff who had been involved in that flood response to thank them. And it was very, very nicely, I had a number of responses thanking me for thanking them. So anyway, we stopped at that point, but yes. Anyway, thank you very much, Anna. We now move on to scrutiny reports. And Lucy, I can see you joining us online. So if you want to talk us through the various different scrutiny reports, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. I know you've got lots of things to discuss, so I will try not to take any longer than necessary. Scrutinies met on the 16th of January and we discussed a number of items. We had 3 cabinet reports and a scrutiny commissioned report. So we looked at private rented sector regulation policies and results of consultation on those, the draft corporate strategy for 2024 to 28, which is going out for consultation, the leisure management contract, and the Domestic Abuse Housing Association accreditation and Domestic Abuse Review Group update, which was the item that we commissioned. We had 19 recommendations across those reports that we're asking Cabinet to respond to. The Climate Environment Panel met on the 29th of November and has 7 recommendations which it submitted. Those were on the Biodiversity Action Plan for Oxford's City Council parks and on retrofit. And the Finance and Performance Panel has also met. That was on the 22nd of January, and they looked at various items. They looked at the council tax reduction scheme for 2024-25 and the HRA rent setting report. They didn't make any recommendations on those items though, and some recommendations they have on the corporate KPI review will be presented at a future Cabinet meeting, I'm told. The items that scrutiny itself looked at, the first one of those was the private rented sector regulation policies, which thank you to Linda Smith and officers for attending to talk to us about that. We looked at housing for asylum seekers and how the policies in this area were aligned with the council's broader domestic abuse work, which we also discussed at the meeting. We made a recommendation to try and clarify how the principles of these policies apply to social housing providers and housing for asylum seekers. And we also made a recommendation to try and explore the way in which domestic abuse and the council's work towards the DAHA accreditation could feed into the policies.
Are you okay to pause there, and I'll ask Linda to just outline the responses that we made to those recommendations. Thanks, Lucy.
I don't have anything to add to what was printed. I think we're accepting those recommendations. We're happy to take those on board when the policies are finally written up post-consultation.
Thanks very much, Linda. Carry on, Lucy.
Thank you for that. On the draft corporate strategy, thank you to Susan and officers for attending. Our discussion looked at how whether the council's housing targets are ambitious enough, how prioritisation of various issues have taken place in the strategy, and how different priorities that the strategy identified were interconnected. We made 5 recommendations. One of these was for a comparative analysis between the current corporate strategy and the new one being drafted. We wanted some references to be included on community wealth building and on how this council could work more with other Oxford institutions to tackle priorities in the zero carbon Oxford section. We asked if there could be a glossary of key terms, and we wanted to kind of draw out the interconnection and interconnectivity between priorities within the foreword.
Thank Thanks very much, Lucy. I mean, I think we were broadly in agreement about what needed to be in the corporate strategy. I think the difficulty is getting the wording right, because I think there's a slight tension between the wish to show our support for a number of kind of key policies, which are frankly slightly jargonistic, without using the jargon that people are familiar with. If you spend enough time in local government, like words like anchor institutions. So we were trying to avoid in the corporate strategy using words like anchor institutions, but we are very much of the view that we ought to be working as anchor institutions with our partner anchor institutions. So we will come up with some wording which I hope that scrutiny will find satisfactory. But otherwise, I think you'll find from the responses that we were broadly in agreement.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. The next one that we looked at is the leisure management contract. So thank you to Chure and officers, and also for the public speaker, Jamie, who came and addressed us. We covered all sorts of areas, and many of which have been touched on by the public speakers just now. And I think this one, I think the committee would probably appreciate if I noted that various members of the committee had significant concerns about the proposed award of the contract to Serco. We note the difficulties around the procurement process and the legalities of that, but the committee did want to make it very clear that it had major concerns. We made 8 recommendations. I'm not going to go through all of them because I don't want to take up too much time. And I've seen the responses which have now been published. Thank you for those. In particular, very pleased to see that if it is decided that the contract is given to Serco, that you will be asking Serco to have a Q&A with officers, with members, so that members can discuss their significant concerns with Serco directly and ask how they can be addressed.
Thanks very much, Lucy. Joe, did you want to add anything to the written responses?
No, thank you, Lucy. As we can see from our recommendation, we did accept all the recommendation that you put forward. Thank you. No, nothing to add.
Thanks. The final item scrutiny looked at was the DAHA accreditation and domestic abuse review group update. Thank you to Mark and officers for coming and talking to us. We talked about the condition of safe accommodation, various housing needs, temporary accommodation and domestic abuse training. We made 4 recommendations. These looked at things like the adequacy of support being provided to those who a council is helping and have suffered domestic abuse, ways that the council might be able to lobby central government to provide better support, and ways that lived experience of children might be better integrated into the council's domestic abuse work. And we looked at whether or not Cabinet might be willing to appoint a domestic abuse champion from within the council group.
Thanks, Lucy. Mark.
Nothing else to add, just to thank Lucy and everybody involved and all the officers. We listened to the recommendations and more than happy to feedback to scrutiny at a later date.
Thanks very much, Mark. Lucy, back to you.
Thanks. These 2 items, the next ones are from the Climate Environment Panel, which I am not part of, but I will dutifully report back on their behalf. They looked at the Biodiversity Action Plan for parks and nature areas. The review of that. Thank you to Chure for coming and talking to them about that. They talked about key areas of work going forward, the impact of actions being delivered, and tree planting. They had 4 recommendations looking at things like how this council could collaborate better with partners, volunteer coordination, and reviewing the structure of the council's contract with ODS in relation to parks and green space management.
Sorry, thanks, Lucy. Anna, your responses are, or is it both of you? Sorry, it is you. I beg your pardon, Joe.
Thank you, Lucy. We did not accept 2 recommendations because we are doing them already. The first one is the mapping due to the financial stress that the council is in, but it's something that we'll look into
in future. And then we did accept one in part because over the volunteer, because ODS is already looking into that one. We didn't accept the structure review because ODS and the council do regularly meet. Otherwise, the fourth recommendation, we did accept it fully. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And on retrofit, I think it's your last one, Lucy.
Yeah, this is the final one. Thank you to Anna and officers for talking to the panel about this. They talked about the technical complexity of retrofit, demystifying the process for the public, and the council's retrofit campaign and other community retrofit schemes. 3 recommendations made on simplifying and demystification of retrofit, on two-way communication in relation to retrofit and maintaining a list of community groups interested in community retrofit, and on compiling a list of local retrofit suppliers and installers for the public to use.
Thanks. And Anna, to respond?
So yes, we have recommended agreed the recommendations of the first 2. The one we did not is the one about compiling a list of local retrofit suppliers, installers, just because I think local authorities can get into a bit of trouble if they sort of are seen to be actively recommending companies like that. But there is a sort of secondary, there's an intermediate by which this sort of thing is done, and that is listed in the response.
Yeah, through the low carbon hub, basically. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lucy. We will now, I think, move on to the substantive part of the agenda. So you're obviously welcome to stay for that. So that takes us on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the Leisure Services Contract Award. Joey, if you want to introduce that, and then I imagine Peter and others may wish to speak. Officers, I've just realised I never did actually hand over to you to respond to any of the public comments, but do feel free to do so if you wish when introducing this report.
Thanks, Susan. I'm grateful for all the representation that we have received and have heard today. I acknowledge the concerns raised and echo what Councillor Susan has said. As Councillor Susan has said, we are committed to ensuring that we retain our leisure centres and to provide a good quality leisure service. That's why we took a long hard look to see whether we could have provided the leisure services through our in-house arrangement. Officers have worked hard on this and prepared our detailed proposal report. The report concluded that this option would not have been affordable to the council. We would have need to invest considerable funding, about 1.7 million per year, which, as our MTFP, Medium-Term Financial Plan budget report, approved by Cabinet in December, shows we cannot afford. Our officers have worked hard to carry out a robust, open, fair process within procurement policies and legal requirements. Having done so, the evaluation team concluded that Serco Leisure is the best tender as judged against our criteria and requirement. So legally, they should be taken forward as the preferred bidder tender. The recommendation of this report are underpinned by the conclusion of the procurement process that our officers have done. I'm therefore recommending the award of the 10-year contract for managing our leisure centers to Serco Leisure. The proposal from Serco Leisure is a strong one, which offers a number of benefits to our users. For example, they will invest over 2.7 million to enhance our facility and centers, including new gym kit at all sites with e-gym equipment at Ferry and the Riz Leisure Center. They will contribute 0.8% of their annual operative revenue to promote inclusive access, good cause. That amounts to approximately 600,000 over the contract period. They will increase participation rates by 62%, and they will increase staffing to 77, including new posts such as health and fitness manager. And they will offer a range of inclusive activities such as free swimming and continuing the youth night activities at leisure, at least on Friday evening, the things I passionately care about. I agree that we need to ensure that Serco Leisure delivered what they have committed to do. So Subject to Cabinet agreeing the report, we will quickly engage with them to complete our due diligence process, finalize the contract. We need to ensure that it contains the right contractual arrangements for ensuring that Serco Leisure delivers their commitments. We will be advised through this process by specialist legal advice. Work with Serco to carry forward their mobilization plans and the transfer from Fusion at the end of March. And we will need to put in place effective internal contract management and clienting arrangement. With the end of the Fusion contract quickly approaching, we now need to prioritize ensuring the smooth transfer of the management arrangement to Serco Leisure at the end of March. We need to do this for the benefit of all our users and residents. I therefore recommend that Cabinet approve the recommendation of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Anna, I think I saw you. Do you want to just, I think I know what you want to say, and if you want to say it, then I think it'd probably be helpful to do that now, and then I'll hand over to officers.
Okay. So yeah, I would just like to take a bit of your time to look outside this room, look outside of Oxford, and to see the state of leisure provision in the UK right now. So Gateshead lost 2 leisure centres in a year. Edinburgh is considering closing 8 this year. Pendle is considering closing a third of theirs. Brighton and Hove have lost 4 pools since 2019. Hartlepool and Copeland have both lost half of theirs since 2010. So as ever, the parts of the country with the greatest health-related deprivation have lost out the most, and the inequality we have in the UK just gets wider. So if current trends continue, the LGA predicts our country will be losing 40% of its pools by the end of this decade. And that is swimming provision for 4 million people, and that is basically a few hundred of thousands of kids that basically won't ever learn how to swim. There are basically no local authorities left who aren't having their budgets obliterated by some combination of care, children's services, temporary accommodation, inflation and energy costs, to name a few. And leisure is not a statutory service, which is why we are now seeing these trends across the country. Returning to Oxford, I understand people's anger here and the anger in this room, like I really do, but I think it is important to emphasise the context in which this decision is being made. We have a contract on the table here that not only safeguards leisure provision for the people of Oxford, it commits to future investment, staff will be paid the Oxford living wage, important schemes like the kids free swimming are maintained, and we don't have to cut other services or this one to be able to afford to do it. Residents of Oxford want a leisure provision that is affordable, accessible, clean, and not with locked doors because we cannot afford to run them. To Councillor Jarvis, there is, of course, an alternative to this recommendation. And basically it's this, and it is grim. And to be honest, I look forward to the Green Budget Amendment, taking the difference with the in-house bid into account. Tell us which other services you will cut, because Oxford deserves to know what the alternative actually looks like. We were elected to make decisions and to be accountable for them. And sometimes those decisions are difficult. I'm sure most people here would love there to be an in-house provision right now, but that is not the financial reality we are currently in. I will vote to keep the doors on these facilities open. So yeah, I support the recommendation and I'm willing to be accountable for that.
Thank you, Anna. I now would invite Peter and others if they wish to comment at all at this particular point. So Peter, Ian, Hagan, Emma, any of you want to say anything? Ian, yes, I can see you indicating.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly, in my role, work with lots of people in the same role up and down the country, and the picture Anna has painted is absolutely the picture out there at the moment. So we've spoken to a number of the local authorities that Anna has mentioned. We've had meetings with Gateshead, for example, and it is a grim picture with local authorities struggling to keep their facilities open. I had a meeting today with a number of my counterparts, and the conversation was about closures. I just want to pick up a few of the points, if it's okay, Chair, in relation to one is the point in relation to, I guess, reputation to an extent and delivery and what's going to be delivered. At the start of the process, we saw references from all of the bidders Serco's references came back very, very strong in relation to delivery. We also got case studies to delve into specific programs of activity. And we also were supported by FMG consultants who work with all of the operators up and down the country on a regular basis to add to our insight and intelligence. We had conversations with Steve Welch, who's the contract lead at Sport England, to get an understanding about how the national centres, what you mentioned before, Chair, in relation to Bisham and Lilleshall operate, and very complementary in relation to their operational ability. And as you mentioned, Chair, as of yesterday, Serco won the Pool and Spa Operator Award, which they've won 5 in the last 6 years. They're also the 2021 UK active leading operator. So clearly that all sounds very credible, and we've worked through that in our due diligence, but the team have absolutely been cited and challenged ourselves as we've gone through about how do we really make sure the delivery's there? How do we make sure we've got a strong client team? So we've worked through all of those aspects over what's been the last 18 months. Just to respond to one of the points in relation to Councillor Jarvis on what you said, you hadn't picked up on, I think, Chair. So the report details the reasons the in-house costings are far higher. It details mobilisation costs, challenges in relation to income. By nature, the council is going to be more prudent, but we don't also have the broad marketing ability and the strategic networks that these operators do to drive income. So that's quite significant. We talk about the repair and maintenance difference and the supply chains. The in-house operation would have to set things up. The bullet point, what I think Councillor Jarvis is referring to, is it doesn't then go on to mention staffing costs. So that was picked up at scrutiny, and that's the reason we've put a specific number in the response to the scrutiny question of 35 million over 10 years, which is the in-house staffing costs. So we have picked that up. We have made it visible, and the difference between in-house we also talked through at scrutiny, which was in essence, these operators have the ability to absorb back office costs. We don't. The council, as you know, Chair, is incredibly lean, doing lots of incredible things. What we don't have is the ability to absorb new things within our cost base, and that's a significant difference in relation to us in the market. And the second point is the local government pension scheme difference. So I think that's the point that Councillor Jarvis was referring to. Serco have also committed to continue the strong work we've reported in relation to working with the health system, which is going really well with the health pilots. So I will stop there, Chair, but they were just the key points I wanted to refer back to.
Thanks very much, Ian. Tom, I think you wanted to come in. Is that right?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a point. There was mention in one of the earlier speeches of allegations of untruth in the report. We believe the report accurately reflects the confidential papers, and as far as we're aware, there's nothing in those papers that does not reflect the truth.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I was somewhat surprised by those rather wild allegations earlier. Thank you. Yes, Ed.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I recognise all that's been said in this discussion, and I'm glad Tom and indeed Ian made the points they did. Incidentally, I do find it regrettable when members pass comment on our council officers, which I think was the clear implication of Councillor Jarvis's comments, and I don't think it's the right way to go about things. But you know, moving on from that, I think there are two other things which haven't come out in the discussion which I'd want to highlight. One is that the report covers a beefed up client side around leisure. So essentially how we manage our contract. I think we need that, and I think it's important. And I think we clearly have no intention of going into this contract without then holding the provider of our services accountable, and that is something we need to do. And as I say, it's in here. The other is, I think we need, and it's part of living in the world that we live in rather than the world we might like to live in. We do need to also understand the legal situation, and there's some quite clear legal advice which is set out in the public papers around legal issues. And one of those concerns payments in the event that, for example, we were to abandon the process, and the significant risk that we would have to pay money to the disappointed top scoring bidder. And I think it is, in addition to being incumbent on councillors who would like us to see us abandon the process, to say what services they would like to cut, what leisure centres they would like to close, or what other budgets they would like to see reduced in order to make that happen. They should also be mindful that we would, in addition, rather than receiving money from Serco Leisure in order to run our centres, look like we would have to pay money to Serco Leisure by way of compensation for abandoning the process. And that is also not a situation I'd want to be in.
Thank you very much, Ed. I'd just like to say a few things myself, really, about the process as well. So I think various speakers have said this has been quite a long time in coming. It's quite true. Obviously, we've known for quite a long time that the contract was coming to an end, and we have been working for quite some time to think about how we can set up a new contract and what we wanted out of a new contract. And one of the things that I think it's no great secret that we, various people have mentioned the fact that we are a council that like to insource wherever possible. So that was a very serious prospect for us when we went into this process. And it was something that we wanted to look at very seriously as an alternative to outsourcing the contract again. And so all the way through this process, as well as talking to external providers, we have been working on the in-house bid. And as has been described both in the report and by various speakers from around the table, unfortunately, that just doesn't work. It doesn't work financially. If we were to go with that option, we would very clearly have to make really big cuts either in our leisure service provision or elsewhere in council services in order to pay for it. And that, frankly, isn't a sensible option when we have got an option on the table that preserves all of our leisure services, invests in them, and actually provides additional income as well. So for all of those reasons, I think we have been through a lengthy process, and we have a procurement process in front of us, which has very clearly led to one provider being the recommended bidder, and we have a procurement process to follow. I think it's also worth reiterating again that it is not a political decision in the sense that it is not possible to pick and choose between different providers. Once you go through a procurement process, you follow the rules of the procurement process. What's really important is to make sure that the procurement process at the start is procuring the kind of contract that you want. And at that point, there was a lot of member involvement in terms of deciding, what a cross-party member involvement in terms of deciding, what were the important things to us. The contract was measured 60% on quality and only 40% on cost. It's clear that concessions are an important part. It's clear that keeping open our services is an important part. And it's clear that investing in our services is an important part. So when it comes down to it, my aim is to make sure that we are providing leisure services along the lines that we have been as a city for quite some time now, which is very good leisure provision. We have got more than one pool, which is more than most areas could say. In a relatively small city, we've got 3 swimming pools, 3 indoor swimming pools and an outdoor swimming pool and an ice rink. And none of these are things that anyone should take for granted in the current climate. And we are going to be able to preserve all of those. We are going to be able to continue to have concessions for local people, which I think is really important to what we want to do as a council, which is make sure that everybody in our city is able to access leisure, and that those in most financial need are often, unfortunately, those in greatest health need, and children and young people have good access to leisure at an early age. So all of those things will be secured if we do go ahead and with the recommendation that's in front of us to award the contract to Serco. Are there any other contributions that anyone wants to make? Nigel.
I'd like to make a brief one. I think we've covered a lot of the ground. I suppose I'd say to those people who criticise us tonight for this, that if Serco is such a money-grabbing organisation, or Serco Leisure is such a money-grabbing organisation, why would they be putting forward a tender which actually meets so many of the things that we want to do, most notably the issue of concessions you mentioned early on, the investment in the different services, keeping the core charges at the level they're at the moment, and so on and so on. I would go through that. So, you know, I judge people by what they actually put on the table, not necessarily by the rhetoric that surrounds it. And secondly, it's also quite possible in this world, this is perhaps an uncomfortable truth, that you can have a large multinational organisation with various parts, which are independent parts, and you can have parts that have quite understandably a very poor reputation, and I understand what the speaker said earlier tonight, and you can have other parts that have a rather good reputation. And all the due diligence we have done, and I've read hard and widely in the last few days about Serco Leisure, shows that actually they have a pretty good reputation. They are employed by a number of local authorities to produce centres. They have won numerous awards. They are so good in the fact that this country trusts them to run national sports centres in Bisham Abbey and Lilleshall. I could go on. So I think we just have to bear that in mind when we come to make the decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Anybody else? No? Okay. In which case, I suggest we move to the vote. So we're being asked to award a 10-year contract, to delegate authority to the interim executive director to complete the due diligence and agree all the various things that are set out on page 15 of the agenda, and to agree to receive annual reports on the performance of leisure services and the contractor, and agree the business plan priorities for the following year. Is everyone happy to agree those recommendations? Please indicate. Thank you. Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. I appreciate that a number of people in the who've attended the meeting may be here just for this item. You're very welcome to stay to hear more of our discussions if you wish, but if you wish to leave, you can actually leave through that exit there, or you can leave from behind us. So thank you very much for attending. I'm sorry the decision hasn't gone the way that you wanted it to, but I hope you've understood why.
I'd like to understand that no amount of financial context, no amount of
I'm really sorry, but there isn't actually a further opportunity to intervene publicly. So if you wouldn't mind leaving now, thank you. That would be very kind. We will now move on to item 9 on the agenda, which is Brownfield Land Release Fund Development of Small Sites for Affordable Housing. And I think this is an item for Linda and Ed.
Council, hear us say no, no.
Linda, over to you.
Thank you. Do I have no officers? We've got someone online?
Oh, yes. Good point.
It's Jason or... Okay, well, I'll start, and maybe some...
You have me and you have Megan.
Yes.
Thank you. This is a report that I'm very pleased to see on the agenda. Before I was on the cabinet and I was a councillor for Blackbird Leys, it was something that really made me cross, seeing all these derelict garage sites, you know, attracting ASB and litter and fly tipping. And I would walk around thinking, surely we could put some of this land, which is a really valuable commodity in Oxford, to better use. So I'm really pleased to be bringing this report. It follows on, so this is the Brownfield Release Fund Round 2. We made use of Round 1, brought forward 3 sites using that, and that work has gone well. This is Round 2. The bidding was very successful. We got everything we asked for. So this is over £340,000 of government money, which we successfully bid for, and which is helping to bring forward these sites. So we've got sites at Underhill Circus, Leiden Road, Balfour Road, Harebell Road, and Pegasus Road. The plan is to bring forward housing which will be 100% affordable housing, and we think we've got the potential there to build approximately 30 new homes, although of course there's no planning permission yet, so we can't be precise about that. I would like us to be doing more of this work. I know that lots of colleagues would like us to be doing more of this work. There is some work being done separately behind this to actually survey a lot of the small sites which aren't used at the moment, like typically garage sites across the city. So that work is being done so that we're in a position to learn from what we do with these sites and scale that up and be ready for any future funding and investment opportunities that arise. Yeah, well, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Do officers have anything they wish to add? Carolyn, looking at you.
No, I don't think so. I think Linda's covered that comprehensively.
Thanks very much. In which case, any comments from anyone? Louise.
Just a quick one to say, I think, this is really us putting our money where our mouth is when we're saying we desperately need homes in Oxford, and we really are trying to find every spot we can put them in. And these are, as you said, going to be 100% affordable homes. So I think this is a great initiative. I'm really pleased to see it coming to Cabinet.
Thank you. And certainly as a ward councillor for one of the areas, Mark and myself are both delighted to see a site which has been a bit of an eyesore with most recently with 2 derelict, unused bungalows because they've become unsafe. It would be absolutely fantastic to see those redeveloped and brought back into use as decent homes. So that's very much to be welcomed. If no one's got any further questions or comments, then I suggest we move to the recommendations, which are quite lengthy, 11 of them all in total. I'm not going to read them all out. You'll be delighted to hear. So are we happy to agree all of those 11 recommendations? Thank you very much. Great. And sticking with you, Linda, we're on to item 10, which is the private rented sector regulation policies around fit and proper person, banning orders and civil penalty policy.
Yeah, I think this is a straightforward report. It's good practice to update these policies regularly, and this is what we're doing here. No major changes in terms of the update. It is mainly about providing better clarity and both for members of the public coming into contact with the use of this policy, and for our officers when interpreting our policies as well. And Gail Siddle here is here to cover anything important that I haven't said and to answer any detailed questions you may have.
Thanks, Linda. Gail.
Yeah, I think you've covered most of that, Linda. Thank you. They are important because it does give us transparency. We do get kickback appeals, representations from landlords, which is their right to do. And it's always good to have something that you can point to as a transparent policy and procedure. It's interesting, the consultation exercise we undertook to do this. There was some very positive feedback from landlords and others who we asked about these. So, I think it's a good thing that we've done this, gone through this process. However long it's felt for me and how painful it's felt, I think it's a worthwhile, and we will welcome them as the enforcement team.
Thank you. Can I just ask, do you still have a landlords forum where you meet with landlords?
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Thank you.
We do one virtual because following feedback that was requested. So we do one virtual and one in person per year, so 2 a year.
Yeah. Good. Thank you very much. Has anyone got any additional questions? Mark.
My apologies to the Cabinet member because I maybe should have discussed this beforehand. Which organisations, landlords, are not accredited? So, for example, like Clear Springs, so like from the Home Office, they'll be awarded a contract, and I think they've got 40 properties in Oxford. They're not part, and they don't have to be part of a HMO scheme. And how many are similar?
Not HMO, private rented.
Private rented, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head. I can come back to you if you give me the exact numbers. Not the exact numbers, the actual organisations. The guidance that we had about Home Office procured accommodation does mean that they don't have to get licences, and the legislation is in a draft format at the moment, because I've been looking at this week, and it's the same, but it hasn't been enacted as yet. But it doesn't mean they're outside the scope of this in total of these policies, because certain parts of the Housing Act would apply. But if you want to contact me, I can certainly look into that matter.
Yes, I'm sorry for springing that on you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gail. That's helpful. And yeah, I'm sure Mark will be in touch. Has anyone got any other questions or comments, or can we move to the recommendations? Okay, in which case, please can we note the results of the consultation, approve the amended policies, and delegate authority to for the Head of Planning and Regulatory Services to review and update them when new legislative powers have been enacted. Everyone happy to agree that? Thank you very much. Great. Okay, and moving on to item 11, which I haven't actually got ready. I think, so I think are we going to take the council tax reduction scheme next? Should we do that?
Rents is okay.
Rents, okay. No, we'll do rents. We'll do rents next, and then we'll do council tax reduction.
Thank you. This is a report which does not bring me any joy, I'm afraid, but it is necessary. It's consistent with the assumptions in our budget consultation, and as you will see, it's about increasing rents and service charges by 7.7% in the next financial year. So we need to do this to keep pace with inflation and keep the housing revenue account afloat and ensure we're able to deliver both the landlord services and investment in our council properties that I know our tenants expect from us. Our social rents will still be less on average than £130 a week. So that's the average, and the average is less than £130 a week, which will still be covered by local housing allowance rates, which is what's important. So these are still social rents available to people on the lowest incomes. I just draw your attention to paragraph 13 on the financial implications. A rent increase that is lower than inflation will have a detrimental impact on the viability of the HRA, as the income will not be able to keep pace with rising costs, and as a consequence, we would be at risk of failing. It would be at risk of failing its tenants in the supply of services and support, and that is obviously something we can't have, and that's why this rise is necessary. As I said, it's already in the budget consultation, and responses have started to come back to us on that, where we can see that there is support for continued investment in new social housing, investing in our current stock, and improving the energy efficiency of our properties as well. All of that work is really important, and it's really important that we have the resources to be able to carry on funding that work, which is why I'm asking you to agree this rise today.
Thank you very much, Linda. Sorry, Graham. Jason, did you want to add anything? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Jason, hold your horses a second, and I'll just, Ed wants to say something and then I'll come to you, if that's okay. So, one moment.
Yeah.
Ed.
Sorry, yeah, thanks for that. So I'd actually wanted to suggest a slight amendment to Cabinet. It doesn't seem to, it was something which came out with scrutiny, and it was a good point really, which was, it wasn't clear what the rationale was for going with the garage increase of 7%, but the increase in homes of 7.7%. because that didn't make a lot of sense. We thought if you do one for one, you should do the other. It would be financially rather catastrophic for the reasons Linda outlined to reduce the homes to the garage level. But instead, I would suggest to Cabinet that we amend our proposal to council and instead go with a 7.7% increase on the council garages. The financial consequence would be beneficial to the tune of, I think, £7,200 a year to the council. And it would be right, I think, that we don't increase less for accommodating motor cars or other storage than we do for accommodating people. I would also just say, I agree with everything Linda said, obviously, social rents in Oxford, £520 for the average council house are very fair compared to the market, and that indeed is why we are so keen on building our stock of social rented housing.
Sorry, thanks very much, Ed. Jason, over to you. And I don't know if you've got any comment on that amendment as well.
I just wanted to agree with what people have said already, insofar that, you know, there's a lot of demand on the HRA at the moment, and high inflation, and, you know, without applying the higher, the cap on the rent increase, the HRA would be financially, unstable. So.
Thank you. And you're happy with Ed's amendment on the garages? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, fine. Okay. I couldn't see why you wouldn't be, but thank you. Has anyone got any further questions or comments? No. Okay. Well, I mean, I think as Linda outlined, it's not something that we do with any great enthusiasm ever, raising rents, but for all the very good reasons that have been set out, I think it's absolutely vital that we do. So all those in favour of the recommendations, please show. Thank you very much. That is agreed. I am now going to vary the order of the agenda. And sorry, thank you very much, Jason, for joining us on this item. So we're now going to move to the council tax reduction scheme, because unfortunately Ed's going to have to leave us very shortly. Ed, over to you.
Yeah, really sorry to colleagues about that. A bit of a childcare curveball came up this afternoon. The council tax reduction scheme, of course, helps people of working age with their council tax, and we're relatively unusual in the local authority world in funding up to 100% of people's council tax. Colleagues around the table will be aware that unfortunately that position is becoming financially very difficult. We will, though, look to maintain it for next year, and anticipating some discussion, which has been prompted by scrutiny again, helpfully, we'll work carefully to design a scheme within the financial envelope that we can afford, which will have the, I suppose, the least bad consequences. However, this scheme for the next year doesn't propose major changes. What it does do is increase the income bands used to assess people's entitlement to the council tax reduction scheme. Increasing those, of course, will lead to people whose income has gone up with inflation being supported. So that's the right thing to do. Laura's worked very hard on this and on the consultation around it, and I know we'll be taking this forward as we review things in the future, and she may have things to add, but other than that, I would like to recommend the recommendations to go forward.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Laura, sorry. I was sure I saw you here, and then I was like, no, she's gone. Apologies, Laura, over to you.
Hello, yeah, no, I've got no other further comments unless anyone has any questions for me. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Has anyone got any questions for Laura or Ed, or any comments? No? In which case, can we agree the recommendations, please? Thank you very much. There you go, that was nice and easy. You may go. We will now move on to the draft corporate strategy. And it is very odd. I feel like I've done this quite a few times now. There's been quite a lot of meetings that we've discussed this at, from scrutiny to the Oxford Strategic Partnership to the parish councils. And if I've spoken about it quite a lot of times, I can only imagine how many times Paul Lisi and Mish have. And this is only the start of the consultation process. So I think I'd just like to start off by saying A huge thank you to both. And this is, of course, a strategy that is being built on people's input into the process. And sorry, thank you very much to Claire. Very important, of course, because this is what sort of sets all our priorities as a council for the next 4 years. There has been a lot of input already, but this is indeed the start of a consultation process, and it has been sort of built up from scratch in some ways, but obviously it's not moved hugely away from our previous priorities in terms of housing, zero carbon, having a thriving city that we want to, that people really enjoy living in, and also making sure that our economy works for all of us. So all of those things remain priorities for us as a city, but we are, of course, trying to set them out in clearer ways. We're trying to make sure that we also have clearer KPIs coming out of this, which we had a good discussion at Finance Panel about the other day as well. That's a separate discussion to this one. And I think it's really for me to hand over to others to talk about the next stages in terms of consultation. And again, thank you for the work, but over to you. Mish?
Just briefly to highlight that, yes, there is, and it's captured in the paper, a long list of meetings that we've already had and many more that we are expecting to. Of course, there's going to be a full public consultation, which, subject to the Cabinet's decision, would start tomorrow, and we'll sort of run through the next couple of months, and we'll take learnings from that. In the scrutiny recommendation around language, which you've already addressed, this is a really difficult one, and we will do our best, but it is, as you described very well, it's about that tightrope between being able to express things in the sort of language which we're quite used to here in local government, but language which it may not mean so much to ordinary residents, and we're trying to veer more towards the latter group in terms of how we do this.
Thank you. Lucy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to add the work that was done in July last year when we had the Local Government Association Corporate Peer Challenge Review. That's a mouthful. So that intrinsically supported presenting this draft strategy as it is at the moment, and that work helped inform our prioritisation around it. So just wanted to flag that externally from the Local Government Association, they've had input to help shape this.
Yes, thank you, Lucy. And I think one of the recommendations from scrutiny was that we to try and sort of map some of the things that we aren't putting into the priorities this time round. But I would hope there are some, because actually that is basically the recommendation of the peer review, is that we stop having quite so many top level priorities and to try and reduce them. So I think that there will be something that does come out of that. Claire, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that has covered all the key points. And as you say, we've been through this a number of times. So thank you. And
we'll indeed come back to it again. So don't feel this is the last say that you'll have on this. Never fear. Well, in which case, I think we probably just need to see if anyone wants to offer any comments or questions at this point. No? Let's move to recommendations then. So can we resolve to delegate authority to the head of corporate strategy in consultation with me to make any changes to the draft corporate strategy following its consideration by scrutiny, and then publish it for public consultation? Everyone happy with that? Thank you very much. We're nearly there, folks. Item 13 is Oxford's Strategic Economic Plan. And this is one of those odd items where we are receiving a document for approval, or for endorsement, I should say, rather than approval specifically, which we don't really have at this stage any opportunity to amend, because it's already been through an approval process, which this council has been involved with, partly through me and partly through our officers, because this document is a document that has been produced by the Oxfordshire LEP. And it is an important document, I think, really, in terms of setting out the strategic plan for Oxfordshire's economy, but it is very much based on some of the issues that we want to see in any economic plan, a recognition of the growth that is happening in Oxfordshire's economy, a recognition of the need for housing to support that, a recognition that we need to make Oxfordshire's economy much fairer, working for everybody, and picking up on some of the work of the Oxfordshire Inclusive Economic Partnership, picking up as well on many of the things that we prioritise as City Council, including things like the Oxford Living Wage, inclusive employment opportunities and so on, but equally recognising that Oxfordshire has an incredibly strong and thriving economy and that we need to be making sure that we are managing it in the interests of the people of Oxfordshire, as well as preparing for it in terms of housing. Carolyn, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Not particularly, only to say that this is the first time Oxfordshire's produced a strategic economic plan without kind of the instruction coming from government to have one. But part of the reason why we recommend to endorse the plan is how closely it aligns to our own strategies, but also the fact that having a strategic economic plan kind of elevates a lot of what we value in Oxford to a wider audience regionally, and helps with further collaborations and partnerships. And the next stage of work, which is the recommendation around the delegation, is to work up the more detailed action plan, which won't just be for local government partners to deliver, but external partners. And I'll avoid using the word and our anchor institutions, but that's the aim, is the next piece of work, and that's the delegation to work with you to agree the action plan.
Yes, thank you for making that important point. And I mean, I think the other thing that potentially it may help us with is bids into government funding. So again, these sorts of plans are always helpful for those sorts of things, and for the creation of other plans like infrastructure and so on. So, you know, they are all connected. Okay, so all that in mind, has anyone got any questions? No. Okay, well, in which case, can we move to the recommendation, which is simply to note and endorse it, and then to delegate authority for us to prepare an action plan? Is everyone happy to agree that? Thank you very much. Right, we then move on to the minutes of the last meeting. So we asked to approve them as an accurate record. Has anyone got any issues with them or any matters arising? I'm not seeing any, so I assume that means everyone's happy to accept them as an accurate record. That only leaves me to say the dates of the future meetings are on the agenda, and the next meeting is on the 7th of February. Thank you all very much for attending.